But long story short, so they were playing, they were on the fifth hole. And the way Steve described this, the way the president described it, they both had exactly the same story, which was that they heard pop, 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 pop. And Steve went into great specificity and great detail as to what happened right after. Within seconds, the Secret Service pounced on the president, covered him. You had snipers with tripods. They knew the direction where the shots had been fired, and they had eyes on the location where the shots had been fired. And long story short, they were. I have confirmed with both the president and with Mr. Wickoff that the gun has been found. They identified it as an AK-47. And thanks to Secret Service drone video coverage, they were able to identify one individual involved in this shooting getting into a car after dropping the AK-47. And my understanding, according to both of them, is that that car has been identified, and I believe it's been surrounded. Whether or not that person has been apprehended or not, I don't know. This happened in a matter of seconds. A little more color, a little bit more details on this is that when they got on top of the president, immediately what is called a fast cart that I believe has steel reinforcement and protection was able to whisk the president away. And then the Secret Service immediately sprung into action.
This is by far the most insane presidential election year for our country. Imagine having 2 assassination attempts on the same guy that the left wants you to punch. The violent rhetoric against Donald Trump has gotten to a point where government officials, even the president and the vice president, are saying Trump needs to be taken out. Now, as you guys might remember, Trump talked about the first assassination attempt once during his debate with VP Harris. And what happened there? The moderators cut him off. I guess they're afraid that he'd come in with the truth. They wanted us to forget about what happened. They wanted to cover it up, folks. They didn't want the first assassination attempt discussed during the presidential debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump on ABC. That it is the Harris-Biden administration who has weaponized the justice system here. They've also incited violence against him multiple times. I mean, they've done it so frequently that there's an entire compilation of it. And guys, before we get started, thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Thank you for hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Don't forget to join us over on our Patreon community. There's a link in the description down below. It takes about 5 seconds so you can join us over there. Our community is growing. Get access to early release videos and content that unfortunately I can't share here. Hit the link down below for our Patreon group. All right, let's get started.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country. Maybe there will be.
There needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
You got to be ready to throw a punch. Well, you have to be ready to throw a punch.
Donald Trump, I think you need to go back and punch him in the face.
That I thought he should have punched him in the face.
Feel like punching him.
I'd like to take him behind the gym if I were in high school. If we were in high school, I'd take him behind the gym and beat the hell out of him.
No, I wish we were in high school. I could take him behind the gym.
I will go and take Trump out tonight.
Take him out now. Okay.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
They're still going to have to go out and put a bullet in Donald Trump.
Show me where it says that protests are supposed to be polite and peaceful.
And you push back on them. And you tell them they're not welcome anymore, anywhere.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
Please get up in the face of some Congress people.
People will do what they do.
I want to tell you, Gorsuch, I want to tell you, Kavanaugh, you have released the whirlwind and you will pay the price.
We're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the
Well, this is just a warning to you Trumpers. Be careful. Walk lightly. And for those of you who are soldiers, make them pay.
If you had to be stuck in an elevator with either President Trump, Mike Pence, or Jeff Sessions, who would it be?
Does one of us have to come out alive?
And they laugh about this on TV. But rest assured that the violence is not something that should be laughed about. This is the exact same rhetoric that the left has been pushing for the past few years. And you guys might remember that Vice President Kamala Harris did the exact same thing during their ABC debate. She pushed a lie about the former president, and he's somehow the guy who's asking for all this.
Donald Trump, the candidate, has said in this election there will be a bloodbath if this and the outcome of this election is not to his liking. Let's turn the page on this. Let's not go back. Let's chart a course for the future and not go backwards to the past.
Let me just follow up here.
It was a different term, and it was a term that related to energy because they have destroyed our energy business. That was where bloodbath was.
Anybody else notice how David Muir just ignored Kamala Harris's lie? No fact checking for her. He knows for a fact that the bloodbath Donald Trump was referring to was not literal. In fact, let's go ahead and play the entire clip to give us context as to what Donald Trump was really talking about here.
They think that they're going to sell those cars into the United States with no tax at the border. Let me tell you something to China. If you're listening, President Xi, and you and I are friends, but he understands the way I deal, those big monster car manufacturing plants that you're building in Mexico right now, and you think you're going to get that, you're going to not hire Americans, and you're going to sell the cars to us. Now, we're going to put a 100% tariff on every single car that comes across the line, and you're not going to be able to sell those cars. If I get elected, now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath for the whole, that's going to be the least of it. It's going to be a bloodbath for the country. That'll be the least of it. But they're not going to sell those cars.
But the left and mainstream media, they'll have you believe that Donald Trump is the one that's pushing for violence, that Trump is the guy that's standing between chaos and peace. But why is Trump the only presidential candidate that's getting shot at? Now, don't get me wrong, guys. No one should be getting shot at. But the message that's been propagated for years is that Trump is evil and he will bring war and pain to the United States, and that he's a threat to democracy and all this other crap. Do any of you guys believe this narrative? Now, we're sure to get more information about this recent second shooting as the days go by, but it's extremely disappointing that they got this close to him. But of course, you got to get a word from Donald Trump himself. This guy is now in his third life, so it's important to know what he's thinking. In an email sent to his fundraising list after this attempt on his life, Trump confirmed that he was safe. He added that nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender. That last part was in all caps, by the way. Now, at this point, we've been informed by law enforcement officials that at least one suspect is in custody. And just to kind of get this out the way, the first thing that Donald Trump did when he got back to the clubhouse was check on everybody. He wanted to know if everyone who was with him was safe. And I think that really speaks volumes about his character, because the left has painted him as a selfish narcissist. AOC even said that Donald Trump would sell out the country for a mere $1. Do you really think that AOC is right in her assessment of former President Trump? Now, all of this is happening as Kamala Harris is struggling in the polls, even though they want you to believe that she won the debate. So another controversy in the Democratic Party right now, an actual Chinese spy in their ranks. Former senior aide to New York State Governor Kathy Hochul, Linda's son, was recently indicted for allegedly being an agent for the Chinese Communist Party. Representative Claudia Tenney wrote a letter to the Democratic governor asking about the damage son was able to do, like how she influenced the state government and the economy, as well as links to reported secret Chinese police stations operating in the Big Apple. Teddy mentioned how their allegations are deeply disturbing and call into question Kathy Hochul's judgment in hiring and listening to such an individual. From there, she urged the appointment of a bipartisan panel to investigate Kathy Hochul and her administration's actions and the full impact of Miss Sun's influence on the New York State government and economy. Sun and her husband, Chris Hu, were arrested recently in connection to a federal indictment unsealed in Eastern District of New York, accusing her of acting as an undisclosed agent of the Chinese government and wielding her influence as a deputy chief of staff in New York State's executive chamber of covertly promoting People's Republic of China and the CCP agendas. Prosecutors say the scheme, which allegedly also involved the laundering of millions of dollars for China and using kickbacks to buy themselves properties and luxury vehicles, directly threatened national security. And Governor Kathy Hochul just kind of like let all this happen right under her nose? Yeah, yikes. Possibly connected to that, Vice President and Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris is accused of working with Mexico's president to encourage the flood of illegal immigrants into the United States in a bid to shift the U.S. farther and farther left on the political scale. The accusations coming no less than Texas Senator Ted Cruz. According to the good senator, Harris wants more illegal immigrants in America, and just about every single congressional Democrat in the state and the House want more illegal immigrants in America. And so this is why Cruz says that that they are actively encouraging, facilitating, and accelerating the invasion at our southern border. He talked about how now the government of Mexico is actively aiding and assisting the human traffickers, that they will provide bus rides throughout Mexico, along with armed escorts from police and soldiers to bring illegal immigrants to the border to invade this country. And they're doing this because Kamala Harris wants them to do this. The end goal for Harris and the Democratic Party, boosting migrant numbers from more than 11 million to 20 million to 30 million to 40 million migrants in the United States. Because according to Senator Cruz, if that happens, Democrats win every election forever and ever and ever. Amen. Yeah. Now, I don't know, guys. This may be yet another way Democrats are trying to score votes for their nominees. Goodness knows they need them. RFK Jr. recently described Vice President Kamala Harris as an unworthy president that can't even put together an English sentence. She was in a recent interview where the former independent candidate said that he doesn't think that the vice president is a worthy president of this country because we need to have a president who can give an interview, who can articulate a vision, who can put together an English sentence, who can articulate her and defend her policies, and who can engage in a debate with and regular debates, unscripted appearances. I mean, he's definitely got a point here, guys. Kamala Harris has only sat down for one press interview with the very liberal CNN, no less. At the time of this interview, she hasn't had a press conference and has only agreed to one debate with former President Donald Trump in, again, a very liberal news network, ABC. She backed out of the Fox News town hall interview or slash debate just recently. I mean, maybe she's just really afraid of the real issues in her candidacy. Maybe it's that. Now, for one, there are the nonstop student protests that are destroying our college campuses. Republican vice presidential nominee Senator J.D. Vance recently talked about it with Fox News' Laura Ingraham. He condemned pro-Palestinian protesters for turning college campuses into garbage dumps and then called demonstrators crazy. If elected, J.D. Vance said that he and former President Donald Trump will enforce the law. For the senator, nobody gets the right to harass their fellow students. Nobody gets a right to set up 10 encampments and turn their college campuses into garbage dumps. And nobody gets the right to block their fellow students from attending class. There's also the issue of Harris's running mate, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, who's now facing a subpoena from the House Education and Workforce Committee, subpoenaed for records related to a $250 million COVID-19 relief fund, this scheme that occurred on his watch. Now, these federal relief funds were supposed to be for federal child nutrition programs. Literally, $250 million was supposed to be feeding children. It was stolen from the government in what was one of the biggest COVID fraud schemes in the country. So instead of nourishing hungry children, the money funded lavish lifestyles, including fancy cars, real estate holdings as far away as Turkey and Kenya for the operators of a very fraudulent Minneapolis-based nonprofit Feeding Our Future. And guys, as it turns out, Tim Walz and his Department of Education, they're on the hook for this massive fraud scheme now. According to the June audit by the Minnesota legislature, MDE created opportunities for fraud and maintained inadequate oversight during the roughly 2-year period that it was shelling out the money. The department also failed to act on warning signs known to the department prior to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic and prior to the start of the alleged fraud by Feeding Our Future. Tim Walz himself admitted that he knew of this suspicious activity by the nonprofit as early as November 2020 when MDE first moved to halt the payments. But the governor allowed the payments to continue after Feeding Our Future sued the department for racial discrimination. Now, again, they made it a matter of race. Why am I not surprised? The records from Governor Walz are due by September 18th. By then, the election may have already been settled.
And the truth and the fact is, Joe Biden has been very clear. He will not raise taxes on anybody who makes less than $400,000 a year.
He said he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts.
Mr. Vice President, I'm speaking.
Well,
I'm speaking.
It'd be important if you said the truth. Joe Biden said twice in the debate last week that he's going to repeal the Trump tax cuts. That was tax cuts that gave the average working family $2,000 in a tax break every single year. Senator,
that is
that's
absolutely not true. That
is he only going to repeal part of the Trump tax cuts?
If you don't mind letting me finish, we can then have a conversation, okay?
Please.
Okay. This is very important, Susan.
Yes,
and it's
but
important.
we need to give Vice President.
I'd just like to, he interrupted me, And I'd like to just finish.
War broke out in the Ukraine in 2022 when Russia invaded the nation. Another war broke out in the Middle East late October when Hamas terrorists launched attacks on Israel. Trump argued that if he were in the Oval Office over the last 3.5 years, wars would not have sparked out in Israel or Ukraine. He said that October 7th, when Israel-Hamas war started, it would have never happened if he were the president. This was just one of the policy questions Trump fielded with Fox News' Sean Hannity in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, just days ahead of his first debate against Vice President Kamala Harris. Let's not forget though, Trump won the state in 2016 when he earned 44,292 more votes than the Democratic nominee, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. The state then elected President Joe Biden in his matchup against Trump in 2020 at a 1.17% margin. Needless to say, guys, both parties want to win the Keystone State. Both Harris and Donald Trump repeatedly visited Pennsylvania in recent weeks. Harris was most recently joined by Biden in the president's first campaign event for the Harris Waltz ticket since he bowed out of the race in July. And in just a few short days, Trump and Harris will take the stage in Pennsylvania for their first and perhaps only debate, which is going to be held in Philadelphia. I think it's really odd that the Donald Trump assassination attempt was taking place in Pennsylvania, the very state that is so key to both presidential hopefuls. Again, I don't believe in coincidences. Me personally, I think they wanted to, number one, take Donald Trump out of the race altogether, but at a minimum, the attempt should have scared him away from the state, and it didn't work. Another issue Donald Trump brought up in his Pennsylvania town hall pre-debate was the spiraling illegal immigration that has plagued the United States since 2021. Former President Trump said that they want open borders. She wants open borders. He didn't miss calling out Harris for her flip-flop on the border. He said that the vice president is all of a sudden, oh, I think we're closing the borders. She was the border czar, whether you like it or not. But even if you don't want to use that term, she was in charge of the border. As a result, Donald Trump said it's the worst border in the history of the world, not just here. There's never been a country that allowed 21 million people to come in over a 3-year period. There's never been. He also mentioned that out of the 21 million people, many are from prisons, many of whom are murderers and drug dealers and child traffickers. I would say that this is pretty relevant considering immigration is the second most important issue to voters behind the economy heading into the 2024 election, according to recent Fox News polling. Now, as for our economy, Trump predicted that the United States will fall into an economic depression if Harris wins the general election on November 5th. He said it'll be like 1929. This will be a 1929 depression. According to Trump, Harris has no idea what the hell she's doing. He compared that to how he gave Americans the biggest tax cuts in the history of our country. These Trump tax cuts are also about to expire, and Kamala Harris wants to terminate them. According to the former president, if you do that, you will suffer the biggest tax increase in history. There's never been a tax increase like it, on top of which she wants to add a lot of tax. Trump cited Harris's proposal on capital tax gains and her plan to install price controls on companies to combat price gouging as evidence that the United States would just hit more financial woes similar to the Great Depression if Harris is elected to the Oval Office. She even wants to tax unrealized gain. But here's something that even ABC News is now trying to hide. I got access to this footage and discuss it in another video that you guys have to check out after this. It's already being censored by mainstream media, so make sure to check it out before it goes away. Anyway, guys, appreciate you guys hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. I'll see you guys on the next one.